In the latest disruption to the country's food supply chain, Tyson Foods said on Wednesday it plans to indefinitely suspend operations at its largest pork plant in the United States.
A Tyson's food processing facility now in Indiana we've discovered today is scheduled to shut down next year. This is all part of an initiative there to slash expenses. The facility opened to accelerate Tyson Foods' automation and robotics initiatives in food manufacturing. The Tyson Manufacturing Automation Center officially launched in downtown Springdale today. Tyson Foods shuttered its U.S. facilities, leaving thousands of positions in uncertainty. And the cause? Trump's trade conflict. This shutdown represents one of the most significant jolts to America's food industry in years, and the consequences could be just starting. It was meant to be the revival story of a generation. America first, bring employment home, defend the heartland. But in 2025, small communities across Arkansas, Missouri, and Iowa have discovered what those promises really meant. Quiet factories, abandoned homes, and paychecks vanished in the name of efficiency. And at the center of it all, Tyson Foods, the country's largest meat processor. A corporation that used to proudly display the Made in America badge, now shuttering plant after plant, community after community, leaving families struggling to survive. These shutdowns were never part of the pledge, but they've become the reality. Let's examine the numbers. In just 2 years, Tyson Foods has closed more than a dozen meat processing facilities, eliminating over 5,000 positions nationwide. In Perry, Iowa, 300 families awakened to an email. Plant shuttered, effective immediately. Workers who had devoted decades on the pork lines were handed a severance check and a link to a job training website. No warning, no strategy. In Noel, Missouri, the entire town economy was built on one Tyson chicken facility. Overnight, it vanished, leaving 500 people unemployed in a town of barely 2,000. And that was just the beginning. Donald Trump claimed his tariff approach would compel companies like Tyson to construct more facilities at home. The higher the tariff, the more likely the corporation will come into the United States and build a factory, he declared from a Pennsylvania steel mill this spring. But in reality, the reverse happened. In 2025 alone, Trump imposed fresh 10% tariffs on all imports, doubled steel tariffs to 50%, and slapped extra duties on food, farm equipment, and packaging from Europe, China, and Mexico. Instead of boosting American manufacturing, these tariffs spiked input expenses across the board. Tyson, whose entire business depends on affordable feed, steel, transportation, and packaging, saw its margins compressed from every direction. Rather than relocate production to American soil, Tyson's boardroom made a calculated decision. Close unprofitable facilities, shift capacity to lower-cost states or countries, and reduce expenses wherever possible. The positions Trump promised would return? Gone, not replaced. And with each factory closure, another American community slid into economic despair. Trump's protectionism, it turns out, protected no one on the factory floor. It protected only profits. In Dexter, Missouri, Tyson's closure of its poultry facility erased 683 positions in a town of 8,000. It devastated our local economy overnight, said Dexter City Administrator David Wyman. We lost people. We lost income. We lost hope. The ripple effect was brutal. The local grain supplier lost its biggest buyer. Independent chicken farmers who raised birds for Tyson saw their contracts canceled without warning. 2 family diners in the hardware store closed within months. The school district cut extracurricular programs because property tax revenues evaporated. Multiply that story across Indiana, Kansas, Pennsylvania, and Arkansas, the places Trump promised to revitalize. And the picture is clear. The very communities counting on protection got blindsided instead. Tyson's plant closures didn't just eliminate positions. They wiped out entire local economies. Businesses that depended on Tyson's payroll dried up. Houses went unsold. Grocery stores reduced hours or closed altogether. Workers who once voted for promises of prosperity found themselves staring at empty factories and for sale signs instead. In Perry, the closure of Tyson's pork plant wasn't just an economic blow, it was a cultural and human crisis. Nearly 60% of the workforce were immigrants and refugees, many from Sudan, Eritrea, and Central America who came seeking the American dream. They purchased homes, paid taxes, sent kids to school, and then in the blink of an eye, it was gone. With Tyson's exit, Perry lost more than 20% of its total population income. Within weeks, the local grocery store reported sales down 50%. Churches and food banks scrambled to feed the newly unemployed. Mayor Dirk Kavanaugh said, "They told us the plant was underperforming." What does that mean for the hundreds of families who did their best every single day? No answer came from corporate headquarters. When factories close, workers lose income, but so do towns, businesses, and schools. The tax base collapses. Retailers shut down, and what remains is a ghost town surrounded by the remnants of a company's abandoned promises. Donald Trump's economic team claimed tariffs would protect American industry, but in 2025, it's clear they've only protected corporate profits while exposing small-town workers to brutal global forces. When Trump raised steel tariffs from 25% to 50%, Tyson executives warned that everything from refrigeration units to meat-cutting blades would cost more. The logic Trump promoted was simple: make imports expensive and companies will build at home. But that isn't how Tyson or any global corporation operates. Faced with higher domestic costs, they don't build new plants, they shut down old ones, they don't hire more workers, they lay them off. While thousands of Tyson workers scrambled to pay rent and feed their families, Tyson's CEO, Donnie King, collected $12 million in compensation in 2024. That figure includes his salary, bonuses, and stock awards, almost 300 times what the average Tyson employee earns in a year. At the same time, Tyson secured over $250 million in direct federal subsidies from USDA programs meant to support agriculture. Add in supply chain support and federal disaster relief, and Tyson hauled in over $3 billion in government-backed aid in less than 2 years, all while closing plants and laying off workers by the thousands. In 2025 alone, Tyson spent over $2 million lobbying lawmakers in Washington, targeting USDA, OSHA, and the Department of Commerce. Their goal: to weaken worker safety rules, limit environmental regulations, and protect their bottom line from tariff backlash. It wasn't just plant workers who suffered. Tyson's sudden closures left hundreds of small contract farmers with nowhere to send their chickens, hogs, or cattle. In Missouri, independent poultry growers awakened to canceled contracts and barns full of birds they could no longer sell. Farmers like Sean Hinkle, who borrowed millions to build new chicken houses at Tyson's request, found themselves staring at bankruptcy. "Tyson left us holding the bag," Hinkle said. "They told us to build, then they shut the door." He now faces foreclosure on his family farm, and he's not alone. Trump's tariff war didn't just affect producers. Consumers paid the price too. According to the 2025 Federal Reserve Manufacturing Report, tariffs on steel, aluminum, and foreign agricultural goods drove food manufacturing costs up by 6.8% year over year. Kansas school districts reported having to reduce meat portions from student lunches because they couldn't afford Tyson's new wholesale prices. In rural grocery stores, the fallout was just as sharp. In Noel, Missouri, the only supermarket saw chicken sales drop 40% when Tyson closed its plant. Supporters of Trump's 2025 tariffs point to the steel industry as a success story. But even this victory is fragile. U.S. steel prices have soared 35% above global rates, making American-made products less competitive overseas. Tyson's closures are partly the downstream result of these higher steel costs. Industry groups representing manufacturers have repeatedly asked the White House to ease tariffs to stabilize prices. But Trump has doubled down, arguing that protecting American steel and aluminum is essential for national security. What he doesn't mention is that American manufacturing and the towns built around it are struggling to afford those very materials. Perry, Iowa; Noel, Missouri; Dexter, Missouri. Across Tyson's footprint, the story is the same. Trump's tariffs drove up costs, Tyson executives saw falling profits, and the boardroom answer was to close plants, cut positions, and protect shareholder returns. The very regions Trump won by promising economic revival are now grappling with the opposite: economic abandonment. For workers, farmers, and small-town mayors, it feels like betrayal. Without severance packages large enough to bridge the gap to new employment, many workers faced hard choices: uproot their families to follow the next Tyson plant hundreds of miles away, or stay behind in towns with no comparable employment. The economic fallout didn't stop at the factory gates. In Dexter, the Tyson plant once supported nearly a quarter of the town's total economy. When it closed, restaurants saw sales fall 50% overnight. One local gas station closed completely, unable to survive without Tyson truckers filling up daily. In Perry, the impact reached the school district. With the plant gone, the district froze hiring, cut after-school programs, and raised student lunch fees to make ends meet. Local business owners who had opened shops counting on steady Tyson paychecks saw sales evaporate. While American plants went dark, Tyson continued expanding overseas. In 2024 and 2025, the company announced new investments in Thailand, China, and the Netherlands, where labor is cheaper and tariffs on exports to Asia are lower. Trump's America First rhetoric had promised to reverse globalization. Instead, Tyson's business model doubled down on it. For multinational corporations, following profits remains easier than following promises. Since 2023, Tyson has closed 8 U.S. plants and laid off more than 5,000 workers. Meanwhile, not a single new Tyson meatpacking plant has opened in the U.S. Trump's tariffs didn't build new factories, they broke old ones. A 2024 Federal Reserve study found that Trump's previous tariffs cost the U.S. manufacturing sector 75,000 positions between 2018 and 2020. Tariffs raised prices, squeezed margins, and made American products less competitive abroad. For families in these communities, the human cost was devastating. Mortgage defaults spiked, food pantry visits tripled. In Perry, local charities ran out of funds within weeks of the Tyson closure. When factories close, the damage isn't measured in balance sheets alone. It's measured in broken families and broken futures. As these families struggled, Tyson's leadership team thrived. The company's stock price recovered as investors praised its agile cost management. In boardrooms, Tyson was a success story. On Main Street America, it was a cautionary tale of what happens when political promises meet economic reality. The story continues. As of mid-2025, Tyson is still reviewing other plants in Kentucky, Pennsylvania, and Texas. More closures are expected. The cycle of tariffs, retaliation, and shutdowns shows no signs of ending soon. The lesson is clear. Protectionist policies that ignore market realities do more harm than good, and the people hurt most are those who can least afford it. Families who once believed in the promise of America First are left asking, when will it be our turn?